G'day guys, this is my RC8 Cafe Racer which I've finished a while ago now, but there's something I've been meaning to do for a while, and that is to make a cover to go in between this gap between the tank and the frame. This is a 750 SS Ducati tank which I put on here. So what I've done is I made a template out of paper and I've transferred that onto aluminium sheet, which is this, and I painted it black. It'll only go on temporarily because what I want to do is make this out of carbon fibre, and I'll cut a window here and I'll put in some of this aluminium mesh I've got here. I'll paint that black. I'll put in a couple of little brackets that I made out of aluminium. One's just off this bolt from the subframe, and this one is a little bracket that's got some short self-tappers into the airbox. It's on the intake side of the airbox. So I'll get going on making that out of carbon and we'll see how we go. So what I've done is I've made, roughly out of foam, a base that I can put my aluminium cover. You can see it there underneath this aluminium foil tape. I hadn't done this before, so this is a bit of an experiment as far as using this tape goes. I'm not sure how well it's going to come away. I'm going to use this PVA release agent. I'll do probably 3 coats of that to make sure it releases as best possible. I've pushed in as much as I can where these little holes are here, so that they will actually come out in the mould, and that will give me the position of the holes to drill. Yeah, so that's about it. Let me start off with one of the coats, making sure I go far enough around the outside as well, because we're going to lay the carbon fibre well beyond the boundaries and then trim it back to the marks that will be seen made by the edges. Okay, so I've got my 3 coats of release agent on this nice and dry now overnight. Just going to mix the epoxy. I've got this nice little accurate scale here. It's much easier than doing it by volume. You get it spot on accurate. But even the best ways trying to do it by volume, I've found that you can get it wrong. So I've poured in a bit of the hardener, a bit of hardener from a previous bottle. So what I'll do is I'll zero, I need to turn that off, turn it on with it on. It'll zero with that on. So I've got just over 8 grams in there. At the moment I'll go up to about there. I'm going to do 3 layers of carbon. So that's 28, so I need, it's 2 to 1, so I need, what's that, 56. Okay, so what I'm going to do is put a coat of epoxy on here. I'll let that go off till it's tacky, so you can touch it and it won't come off on your finger, but it's still tacky and hasn't gone off completely. I'll press in a layer of carbon, and the idea is that that gives you a nice smooth surface of epoxy as your finishing coat. If this was a perfectly smooth mould, it would come away and it would be perfect and ready to go. This isn't. Using this tape and this release agent, it's got quite a rough surface. It is flat, but it has got that texture to it, so it will need a bit of a sand using wet and dry going from coarse to fine. But at least I'll have a thickness there of epoxy I can sand into. And once I've sanded it, I'll spray it with an acrylic clear coat, and that'll give it a nice, perfect, smooth finish, I hope. Alright, once I've done that first coat and I'm waiting for it to go off, I'll put this in the fridge under some cling wrap, and that'll stop this going off, and then I can do the other layers with this later on. Alright, here we go. Okay, I put 3 layers of carbon on here, it's all gone off, and I've pulled it up. Came away surprisingly easy from the mould. All the release agent is on here. I'm hoping I can just peel it off, because it's sort of left that blue tint on there. And yep, it is coming away very nicely. That is excellent. Nice. Quite a smooth finish. There's a few little imperfections from bubbles and things, but it's quite flat. It won't take much work, I think, to get that perfectly to a mirror finish. So I'll just keep pulling away all this release agent. Look at that. Beautiful. Alright, I'll keep doing that. I'll get that trimmed, and we'll work on this surface here. Okay, so I've trimmed the piece up and I've given it a sand, drilled the holes, and I'm just going to give it a spray with some acrylic now, some clear, and hopefully that will give it a nice smooth surface. Here's the finished cover. What I've done is I've trimmed the window in here, being careful to keep these parallel, and this cut here in line with that bend there. The finish came out pretty good, quite happy with that. I decided not to go with a black screen, mainly because you could barely see it. So my first thoughts were to go with this guy. It is a fairly fine opening, of the whole opening is quite fine. I also tried this one, which I think I'm going to go for. That's a more open screen, which I've painted aluminium. It was a different colour, so I'm going to go with that. What I've done is using this Dremel here, I've cut these little dots well into the epoxy to get beyond the acrylic paint, and what I'll do is I will put this guy on and I will clamp it with these pegs, and I'll get some epoxy that's gone off a fair bit, so it's quite viscous, and I'll just drop a dot into each of those spots, and that'll hold this in place. Alright, so I've set this up with the pegs on there, clamping the mesh in place. I've got some rubber on the back to protect the painted finish. Clear acrylic paint I've got on there. I'm just going to use this ultra clear epoxy Araldite, it's blue. rather than mix up a batch of epoxy and wait for that to go off to the right consistency. This stuff is pretty thick when you mix it up, and it doesn't run very easily. So that should be heaps. I'm just going to use a nail. A bit like surgery. Alright, so I've managed to not get any glue within the window, which is first prize. Now we'll just let that go off and she'll be done. Whack it on. So covers are done. Time to put them on. I've got some little plastic washers just to protect the carbon a bit. And there you go. How schmick does that look? I think that's the finishing touch. The last piece, I reckon. And I would call this bike finally totally complete.